A lot of news coming out about Ferrari's new upgrades, Nate, going into the weekend, and then Charles Leclerc delivers, by getting on the podium in Spa. But Lewis Hamilton had, I think we can all say, a disappointing weekend overall. I mean, he was able to make good on his grid position in Sunday's race, but ultimately not where they want to finish by any means. How do you think Lewis is handling things currently with where he's at, where the team's at in general?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we heard him apologizing to the team on the Sunday. He was very upfront about the fact that he had struggled and that it was all on him in terms of, I mean, it was in Q1 in the sprint. It was a spin out. He said he had a rear lockup, and I think he was like, it's the first time in my career that's ever happened. And then, didn't get out of Q1 again for qualifying itself. So I think he's been very honest about it. But what was interesting to me, and this is kind of where this is a few people said this in the paddock over the weekend. It was, I think, quite a poorly timed weekend to have that kind of weekend for Lewis because he'd come into the week talking about all the work he's doing behind the scenes to push Ferrari forward. He's identified a lot of areas where he wants them to improve. And this is one of the things he should be doing. He's coming in with a wealth of experience.
Mhm.
He's a seven-time world champion. He's won more than anyone else in Formula One can say they've won. They've experienced victory. So he should be doing that, and Ferrari should be listening to him. And he said, "I don't want to be like Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel, who came here and didn't win championships." And then it just seemed, of all the weekends to have kind of a self-inflicted bad week, it was like, well, maybe one of the places that also isn't firing properly is also Lewis, and I think maybe the one hope I have as somebody who's obviously quite keen to see Ferrari win a championship at some point in my journalistic career. I know Laurence is the same. Is that I think
Mhm.
Lewis is the first person to admit that he's not racing brilliantly at the moment as well. So I think that the good thing, even though he's maybe struggling a little bit to find the same that Charles is finding, he seems to be quite brutally honest about where he's at the moment. And still, you can still look at Carlos Sainz to a lesser degree. I think all the drivers that have switched cars still, it's just taken so much longer to kind of find that groove. And Charles Leclerc, I think, is just driving magnificently at the moment. I think
Mhm.
Charles has probably actually had quite an underrated season just because we've all been
Sure.
talking about Lewis. Ferrari really haven't been super competitive in the grand scheme of things, but all the podiums have gone to him. So I think Lewis is doing okay with it, but certainly I think if you'd said to us, I mean, if we'd sat here in February and said by going into the summer break, let's be honest, it's unlikely Lewis is going to get a podium in Budapest. I would have struggled to believe no podiums at all. Obviously, he had the sprint win, which was a fantastic performance, but no Grand Prix podiums yet. I think is a surprising one, and I suppose that's something Lewis has just got to work on with the team. But I think
Uh,
generally speaking, he seems happy as he can be given the situation at the moment.
and in the run into Spa, I think Lewis had started to make some progress and actually started to get either closer or beat Leclerc in qualifying, certainly. And so I think there had been that progress. And then you're right, Nate, the two kind of almost silly errors. I mean, the one on the Friday qualifying for the sprint, apparently it's because he was the first time he was running a new braking system, which the team had developed and Leclerc had run it already, but it just caught him out,
Mhm.
and that's surprising, but it was the first time he'd really kind of pushed with that. And then qualifying for the race, it was just skipping the inside of
That's track
Radalon.
limits, wasn't it? That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so track limits infringement. And one way you're like, come on, you're right, seven-time world champion.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the case. But the frustrating thing I think for him as well is that actually the overall performance wasn't terrible, and it's kind of a shame we didn't get to see what Lewis
yeah.
could do with what was a upgraded car as well, and whether he could have matched Leclerc. I actually think Leclerc was on
Mhm.
superb form over the weekend. The way he held off Max throughout that race, qualified ahead of Max. On a circuit where it looked like the Red Bull was certainly a contender with the McLarens in the sprint, and whether that would have ever been over a Grand Prix, maybe not, but certainly it was looking competitive. So not trying to take away from Leclerc, but I think that's why it was super disappointing for Hamilton. But look, even seven-time world champions have off weekends every now and again. So if he can get back into it in Hungary, a circuit where I think he's won 8 times, am I right in saying that? I think, it's
That's
one
true.
less
That's true. Actually, I,
where
I
he's
I said that
won.
about Budapest, and then my brain was like, of all places, it might be where
Yeah,
Lewis.
so I do wonder whether we'll see him, back up there in this one. And yeah, I feel like he needs it. But a lot of what seems to be going on in Lewis's head right now is that, okay, this season hasn't gone the way he wanted. That's been clear for some time. And it is that progress towards next year. So we were talking about earlier about how he's been writing long letters to the heads of certain departments to, emphasize all the things that he needs to get sorted on next year's car and then following them up with in-depth meetings. And yeah, like you said, Nate, one of the things he made clear is that he doesn't have the time hang around too long and
Right.
make this into a 5-year project to get Ferrari back at the front. He needs it to happen really in the next 2 years. And so he's doing everything he can behind the scenes to make that happen. It'll be interesting to see whether he does. And then, of course, if Ferrari do make improvements, whether it's him or Leclerc who really benefit from a championship.
I'd love to see his handwriting. I feel like he'd have great penmanship. Maybe not as good as George Russell. I don't know who has the best penmanship on the grid. That would be interesting for us to judge.
Great use of penmanship, first of all, I want to say.
Thank you.
I think Lewis is
How
the sort of guy that
English.
has, yeah, I think he's got a nice wooden desk with like a nice calligraphy set, and he's like writing it like, I mean, he's a knight of the realm after all, he is a servant, so he has to write, in that style. Yeah, what do you think? What is he sending? Handwritten notes? Is it pages doc? Is there Excel spreadsheets that because I still to this day can't format an Excel spreadsheet. I've never needed to. I'm not sure if Lewis would be able to either. But is he sending over like
I don't know. Is he a notes guy on
Yeah,
his phone?
maybe a notes guy. Maybe a
What
notes guy.
say
Laz,
you,
what do you think?
Laz?
Or I don't know, maybe notes to someone to then turn into a more formal document. Maybe he has someone there willing to help him out,
Or
personal assistant. I
we're
don't know.
also discounting the biggest one. Maybe he's just putting it all through ChatGTP and then that's being sent over to whoever needs to do that. That's
That's
also an
fair.
option as well.
He would be ahead
Chat,
of his times.
what should I say to Ferrari to make them quicker? And you get like a long answer from ChatGTP
We should
with
do
the
that
long.
for one of the summer break episodes. Just type in prompts into how to make these teams more efficient and better on track and just see what ChatGPT or OpenAI says.